Hey, thank you for tuning in. My name is Brian Winter. I'm a tax attorney, tax professor. What I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be talking about that Form 8821, where you want to go ahead and you want to provide somebody else with access to be able to get information regarding your taxes. Now, when we're looking at the 8821, that doesn't mean that the person's going to be able to represent you before the IRS. There's a separate form that you deal with for that, but the 8821 will allow that individual that you're designating to be able to access certain types of information, maybe to retrieve your tax transcripts and deal with confidential information from the tax portion of it. But to do that, you have to fill out that 8821. Now, this is something that you may see tax preparers that may not have the EA credential, the enrolled agent credential, or a CPA or a tax attorney credential being able to request, so that way they can go ahead and help you when you're looking at needing that specific information. So this video is going to be helpful if you're looking at trying to appoint somebody, or if you're a tax preparer and you need to be able to complete this 8821, so that way you can access information for your client. So let's go ahead, let's get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start talking about the difference between our Form 8821 and our Form 2848. So I have a separate video that walks you through the Form 2848 so you know how to fill out that form if that's what you're looking for. Now, when you're dealing with the Form 2848, what you're dealing with is you're giving somebody a power of attorney. So in that instance, the Form 2848 permits the other individual, the person that you're designating or providing that power of attorney to, that permits them to go ahead and represent you before the IRS. So if we look at the green column over here, what we see is Form 2848. You can go ahead and you can receive transcripts. You can go ahead and you can receive IRS notices. You can review account information, speak to the IRS on behalf of the client or the taxpayer. So you can talk to the IRS and ask them questions. You can negotiate with the IRS depending on what kind of authority you're provided. You can sign certain agreements, represent your taxpayer in that situation. You have disclosure authority, all kinds of things. Now, some of those may be limited based upon what is contained in your Form 2848, but it is much broader. Now, those are also limited to specific groups. So you're generally going to have to be an attorney, a CPA, an enrolled agent for those. And then there are some special categories such as family members that may be able to do that, and certain actuaries that can also become limited for Form 2848, and sometimes employees of a company. You can provide a 2848 for an employee of a company to go ahead and do those types of things, but it is much more limited. Now, when we look at the 8821, this is one that a lot of taxpayers run into, that they're going to be doing an 8821. And what you're doing is you're appointing a designee to go ahead and to retrieve certain information from the IRS. Now, it doesn't mean they can represent you. You need that 2848 in order to represent you. But there's a lot of taxpayers out there. They're good taxpayers. They're just not credentialed in terms of having their attorney, CPA, or their enrolled agency yet. And what they're doing is they're still going ahead and practicing. So they may have done your tax return, but they can't go ahead and represent you in front of the IRS in terms of things like audits and those types of things. So you can't give them a 2848 because it doesn't allow them to do it. So instead, what happens is you will provide them with an 8821, and then that's going to allow your uncredentialed taxpayer to go ahead and file or to access certain types of information from the IRS. So the 8821 is being used for that. So if you're a tax practitioner, you don't have the CPA or enrolled agent designation yet, well, then what we're looking at is that Form 8821 so you can access the information. Now, if we look at that middle column over here, what we're seeing is the blue column, and you can see the things that you're able to do. You have disclosure authority at the very bottom of it, but the other things, you can receive transcripts, and that's extremely important when you're doing tax returns to be able to see the transcripts, because the transcripts are what's providing the information that the IRS already has. So maybe a taxpayer doesn't remember certain things, or maybe there are penalties that have been added on or things like that. Well, if you're looking at the transcript, you can see a lot of that information. The other one, you can receive IRS notices. So if the IRS is going to be sending notices, you can request to have that notice sent to you as well. and then you can review their account information. So the 8821 is going to give access to a lot of this information. Now for an 8821, you can see who the designees could be. You could do an 8821 or a 2848 for the attorney, CPA, and enrolled agent. But you can also do an 8821 for, say, a payroll company, bookkeeper, lender, although you're probably going to want to go ahead and limit it. So we'll look at how you limit it. Family members, your tax preparer, any of those individuals, you can go ahead and give an 8821 to a lot of different people. The 2848 is one that's going to be much more restricted. Now let's go ahead, let's actually do a walkthrough of our 8821 so we can talk about what type of information is contained in there and how you're going to correctly fill out this 8821. All right, well, let's take a look at this Form 8821. Make sure that you understand the tax information authorization. So that way you're going to be able to go ahead and either help a taxpayer, if you're a tax practitioner, help a taxpayer be able to allow you to gain access to certain information, such as the tax transcripts. Or if you're a taxpayer, that you understand how you can go ahead and allow somebody else to access that information on your behalf. So maybe you're applying for a loan, maybe something with the university and financial aid, whatever those situations may be, you're going to understand how you're going to do this as well. All right, so the first thing we have to do, and everybody has to deal with this, right on the first one is going to be the step part, taxpayer information. So step number 1 on here. So the person that we're filling this out for is going to be Maria Lopez. Her address is 2199 Lakeview Drive over in El Paso, Texas. So we're putting her address up there. And then what we have is our taxpayer identification number, oftentimes a social security number there, and her daytime telephone number. So it could be a cell phone or whatever. But that's what you're going to put right there. Okay, now here's the thing. If you also are married, your spouse is going to have to also fill that part out. They're going to have to do their own Form 8821. Maria cannot go ahead and provide any type of authorization for her husband, Henry. So Henry's got to go do this on his own, okay? So you're going to have an 8821 from Maria. You're going to have another one from Henry. All right. The next thing we do is we jump over to step number 2 now. So what we have is our designees. So we can go ahead and we can authorize more than one designee if we want to. So we could have one. You can see if there's 2, you can go ahead and you can have notices sent to both of them. However, you can go ahead and you can, at the very top over here, you can go ahead and you can actually check a box if you have more than 2 designees. We don't have more than 2 here. We just have Daniel Sanchez, and that's the only one that we're going to be dealing with. So the designee is the person who's going to be receiving that information. So Daniel could have been a CPA, an enrolled agent. Maybe they're a tax practitioner who doesn't have the designation yet of an enrolled agent or a CPA. So we're just putting Daniel Sanchez, right? It could be a family member, bookkeeper, whoever it is. It's Daniel Sanchez. His office is going to be 7809 Broadway in El Paso, Texas. So we're putting his address in there as well. Now, if he has a CAF number, we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually do that right here. We're going to fill that in right over here. If not, then if this is the first time he's ever served as a appointee, right, then what we might have to do is put none right here, and then there's going to be assigned one. All right. Our P10, we're going to go ahead and put that in there right there. We have our telephone number that we would enter into, a fax number if we have a fax, but that's the information. So this is all the information from our designee, the person who is going to have access to go ahead and get that information. So that's how you're going to be filling out that portion of it. Now, part 3, probably the most important part of this entire form, right? So when we're looking over here, this is the tax information, and you have to be pretty specific here when you're going through and dealing with the tax information. All right, so let's go ahead and deal with this. Now, here's one thing. It says the little checkbox up here. It says by checking here, right, I authorize access to my IRS records via an intermediate service provider. Look at, you'll want to talk to your provider on that. The person who you're giving the information to, if it's the CPA, it's the tax attorney, whoever it is, they'll generally help you figure that part out. what this does is it allows the provider to use a third-party intermediary, an approved party, to be able to access information from the IRS instead of going directly through the IRS. So that's the reason for it. Oftentimes, this is just left unchecked, but it depends if your tax preparer is predisposition to using this, right? All right. Now, here's what we have. Here's where I told you the most important stuff is. So the first one is look at A. We're dealing with A up here. And what we need to deal with is our, there we go, type of tax information, income, employment, payroll, excess, sorry, estate, excise, gift, civil penalty, whatever it may be. So in our situation, what we're dealing with is income. So we went and listed income here. All right, so it's an income. So we're going to want access to, say, their wage and income transcripts. So that's what we're really after here. And that's why we're getting the 8821, so we can go ahead and we can actually do this. So we've already gone through the first few steps here. Now what happens is we go ahead and we say what form, and our form is going to be the 1040. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to fill out it for the 1040. So we're requesting an individual. So we're working with an individual right here. So we want that 1040 is what we're after. All right, so we put the 1040. Now, here's where it's really important here is when you're looking at the years or the periods over here, do not put all periods or anything like that. You need to be specific. Be specific here because this can cause issues. The IRS will kick it back to you if you're not specific here. So when you're looking at the years or periods, you can do two things. You can either go retroactive or you can go proactive, or you can do both, right? So here I have 2024, 2025, 2026. Now let's say that I also want to go ahead and authorize somebody to be able to access my information in 2027 and 2028. We can do this in the future as well. So we could have these years on here. We're being specific as far as the year, or you can see years or periods, right? So all of a sudden, now when Daniel calls, Daniel will have access to all those years in future years. Now, what usually happens is if you're looking at the future years, you're usually limited to 3 years in the future. So we can't go 20, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. We can't go way out there in the future. It's generally 3 years. And then you would update it, as it starts to expire, then you would update this again. So that's the way that you would deal with it. Then it wants to know the specific tax matters, right? So it could have been a specific penalty that you were dealing with. Maybe it was an underpayment penalty. Maybe it's failure to file penalty, whatever it is, if you're looking at it from a penalty perspective. Ours wasn't some type of civil penalty. Ours was income, is what we said in column A. So what we're dealing with is we want our wage and income transcripts. We want to go ahead and allow Daniel to access Marie's wage and income transcripts. So that's what this part is about. So that's what we're doing here. And this is how we're filling out part 3 on here. All right. Now, we can have more than one issue, right? We could have also had civil, we could have had business issues, we could have said 1065, we could have done a lot of different things with this if we needed to. But right now, we're just doing this individual income, 1040, and that's what we wanted to focus on. All right. Specific issue not recorded on the centralized authorization file, or CAF. So, okay. So basically what happens is when you go ahead and you fill out this form, then what's going to happen is that this form generally goes into their system, and it lets all IRS agents that are working on the stuff, they can see it. So that way, if you have the designee that calls, they know that they're allowed to talk to them about this specific information. Okay. However, sometimes you may not want your designee to have all of that information. Okay. So it may be limited to a specific situation, and you can do that. So look at this, specific use not recorded on the CAF. If the tax information authorization is for a specific use not recorded on the CAF, check this box. Okay. So a lot of times what you could do is when you're going through here, like I have the wage and transcripts, wage and income transcripts, but maybe you're dealing with a lender and they need to verify some certain information and they're asking for permission to do this. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to check that box because it's going to limit what they can get. They don't need to see everything else. So it's just the information that they need, and that way they can't ask about other things. So you can really start to limit some of that stuff. And what happens is this isn't going to go to the overall CAF system, so not for all agents. So it's more limited in nature in that situation. Okay. Universities, sometimes they need things for financial aid, those types of issues. So that's why you would be checking this box for number 4. If you're using your tax preparer or enrolled agent, CPA, tax attorney, those types of things, oftentimes that's not going to be checked here. The other thing that's important with that is if you're going ahead and it's for a issue not listed on the CAF and you go ahead and you click this, then what happens is it doesn't go ahead and revoke your other areas, okay? So it doesn't revoke your other 8821s. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at this. Retention revocation of prior information authorizations. If the line 4 box is checked, see that? Skip this line, because if you check line 4, it doesn't revoke anybody else who already has an 8821 because it doesn't go to the central authorization file. So it's not going to go ahead and revoke that for them. If box 4 isn't checked, the IRS will automatically revoke all prior tax information on file unless you check box 5. So once you go ahead and you file this and you didn't click box 4, then if you have any other 8821s out there, so you've already had other designees, those other designees will be revoked. It'll be revoked. They can't access your information any longer. If you did not want to revoke access to other designees, then what you could do is you could click here, and now it's going to go ahead and they're still going to have access. It's not going to have us undo that. Okay. So another things you can do, by the way, unless you click line 5. Oh, and I should tell you, and attach a copy of the tax information authorization that you want to retain. So once you put the box, you click that. Also remember to attach a copy of this of your prior 8821, so that way they know which ones you want to keep in effect. So you're not going to go ahead and terminate anything with that. Now, sometimes people just want to go ahead and they just want to revoke a entire 8821 and they don't want to appoint anybody else, and you can do that. You don't have to have anybody who has access to it. So you're just going to grab this form, and at the top you're going to write revoke on it, and then you're going to go through, you'll attach a copy of the other ones that you had if you still have that copy, otherwise a statement saying which ones you want to go ahead and revoke, and then you're going to sign it. So you can revoke it without appointing a new designee if that's what you choose to do. Finally, what we do is we just come over here and we sign and we date this, and we're going to go ahead and file. Now, hey, for the signature on this part, it's got to be a handwritten signature unless you're doing an e-filing, and then you can do, if you're e-filing, then it can be an electronic signature as you go ahead and do the e-file. But if you're not e-filing this, then what happens is you have to do a manual signature in order for this to work. You can't just type in it. I couldn't just go ahead and type in Maria, right? I wouldn't be able to go and do that. So that wouldn't work for me. I need the actual hand signature. And like I said, if you're doing this through electronic signatures because you're e-filing, that's different. All right. Hey, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, remember, go ahead, subscribe to this channel. I have all kinds of form walkthroughs. I do the entire series on the 1040. So I have the 1040 walkthrough, but I also go line by line, and I have videos for every single line to show you where that information comes from and how you deal with that line in case you get stuck on your taxes, international tax, all things tax that should help you throughout your career or as a taxpayer. So subscribe to this channel. It'll help you out every year. All right. Thanks so much for watching it.